profound and wondrous Dharma
is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas.
is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas.
Now we can see and hear it.
Now we can see and hear it.
Accept and maintain it.
Accept and maintain it.
May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth.
May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth. Okay, good morning. Good morning, everybody at Nebraska Zen Center. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for your practice. Myorin, thanks for your wonderful e-knowing, your voice. Wonderful, good work there. And I want to just welcome Genyu, Koyu, and Colin from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So good to see you guys. And yeah, wonderful. Thanks for being here. And Heather from our neck of the woods, from my neck of the woods in Des Moines, Benji online, Chris, Monty, Keith from our neck of the woods here in Ames, Max, Vicky, sorry you got COVID. I'm a little bit under the weather myself, but I hear you. Joe, thanks for being here. And Navab, happy birthday to Navab. Her birthday is tomorrow. So thanks for being with us this morning. All right. I'm going to share my screen and offer you a talk. All right. So let me say first that this particular talk is this is the first of a what I intend to have as a series of talks on how do we sit zazen better? How do we sit zazen with more maybe energy is one way to think about it, with more energy, with more enthusiasm, with more enjoyment. And thus far I've been working. This is really a work in progress for me. Thus far I've created 8 points for what I'm calling optimizing zazen, but already it's kind of morphed into 9. Because today I was going to talk about diet and exercise, but as I started doing it, I thought, no, there's too many things with diet as one and exercise as another. So I'm just limiting myself today to focusing on the topic of exercise. And just as a preview for the one on diet, I'll probably do that in my next talk like this. It will not be an encouragement for everybody to become vegan or vegetarian. That's not the point. So stay tuned on what I'm referring to when I am talking about diet. It's not that veganism or vegetarianism is bad or wrong. It's just that that's not going to be the focus of the talk. If anybody was assuming, right, that's what it would be. I'll get into that in another time. But first, if we want to, there's this saying, you are perfect as you are, but there's plenty of room for improvement. Right? There's a saying in Zen, you're perfect as you are, but there's plenty of room for improvement. So I want to use this talk. Let me get back to that. We're going to use this talk to first, what does it mean to be perfect, and that we also need to improve our practice? What does that mean? And now on my screen it says first point. This first point for optimizing zazen is diet and exercise. But as I mentioned, I'm just going to be focusing on exercise and how that gets incorporated into our Zen practice. I'm going to offer you some of my own personal anecdotes, my teachers, a little bit from how my teacher did this, and from her teacher, Noda Daito Roshi. I'm going to offer you a video that I found online about Sojiji. Sojiji is one of the head temples in Japan, of Soto Zen, one of two head temples of Soto Zen in Japan. And so I'm going to show a clip from their life. And so that's kind of the intent, and then I'll close it. So that's the intention of this particular talk. All right, so this morning actually, I was going, my wife and son and I were walking to the grocery store, and at the grocery store, we saw, I know, not kidding you at all, we saw this license plate that I don't know if you can read it on the screen there, but it's spelled XRSYS. In Ames, there's all kinds of personalized license plates dedicated to the cyclones, and this one says exercise. So I thought that was very, I don't know, it seemed to be like the universe is supporting me in this talk this morning about exercise. All right. Okay, so let me start out by saying, well, what does it mean to be perfect, right? When somebody like a founding teacher like Katagiri Roshi or Suzuki Roshi says that we're perfect just as we are, what does that mean? What does that look like? Does it mean that we make no mistakes? Does it mean that, what, and if so, what are the mistakes that we might be immune to? One thought is that it's referring to our practice of the precepts, that we hold the precepts. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the precepts, these are the foundational ethical components of Zen practice. And they read in their traditional form very much like the Ten Commandments of not to kill, not to lie, not to steal, not to commit sexual misconduct, not to abuse drugs and alcohol, right? Those are the traditional five. And the difference is it's not a commandment. It's more of, and it's not a external authority telling you this is how you must live your life. They're not black and white rules, all right? So we have to, I want to caveat what I say here about precepts. These are not black and white rules. They're not something I'm not standing up here with a clipboard and a pencil writing down everybody's mistakes about the precepts, and then I'm going to show them to you at the end of the when the when the universe ends, or when maybe this class, when this particular Dharma talk ends. Yeah, I'm not standing up here to judge you. Just as the poem we just read, put aside all the judgments that you place on yourself or on others. We have this, that we have this mind that is constantly critical of our errors, of our mistakes, and it actually gets in the way of improving ourselves. So Dogen, Zen Master Dogen, the 13th century founder of the Soto school of Zen, he says very clearly, he says, zazen and the precepts are one. That when you practice meditation, not any kind of meditation, but when you practice Soto Zen Shikantaza, then the precepts are held perfectly, right? So that's one way to think about our inherent perfection. Now, when we sit zazen, everything is absolutely perfect. The problem with that is that we often don't feel like everything's perfect when we're sitting zazen. And if you're like me, this past half hour of sitting, it was filled with challenge and difficulty, and it required some effort on my part, as I'm sure it did your part, to stay still, to remain quiet, to not move, right? This is a challenge that we all face when we sit. So again, we have to ask the question, what does it mean to say zazen and the precepts are one, especially if we don't feel like we're at one with everything? All right. So zazen, here we practice zazen for the sake of nothing. This is a common refrain in Soto practice. Zazen, which means seated meditation, We do it. Why do we do it? Well, if you were to ask somebody in our general society what meditation is for, and certainly it looks like what we're doing is meditation. Zazen looks like meditation. If you ask somebody, they're saying, well, they want to have peace of mind, right? Somebody looking from the outside in, oh, they want to gain wisdom. And just a real short response to that is, when we do zazen, it's not to gain anything in particular. And that is not to say that we don't have periods of feeling at ease, of oneness, of peace, of wisdom, of insight, of compassion. It's not to say that we don't experience those things. It's just that we're not trying to aim for them. Because as soon as we set ourselves up to aim for some goal, we are creating tension in our body and mind. So the practice of zazen is letting go of these goals, just like Faith in Mind that we just read says that the foolish seek after goals. And again, we have to put another caveat in here, is that seeking after a goal is not a problem. So, right, we get caught in this dualistic way of thinking, oh, should I seek a goal? Should I not seek a goal? What am I doing? And should I improve zazen? Should I not improve zazen? This is dualistic thinking that we're caught in. All right. Now, one of my teachers, he said, zazen, the zazen of someone just starting, the zazen of someone just starting practice of zazen for the first time is exactly the same as the zazen of someone sitting for 30 years. That's a really profound thing to say, because usually, again, we think that if you do something for a long period of time, you're going to get better at it. This is this self-improvement kind of model that we're aware of, and it's not a bad model to have. Like, you keep practicing something, and I do want to suggest that we need to practice. Absolutely, we need to practice if we want to get better at something, including zazen. But from the ultimate perspective, the zazen of someone just starting is exactly equal to someone who has been sitting for 30 years. All right? There's absolutely no difference there. Now, we all have different experiences while we're sitting, but there's not somebody taking notes that's outside of our practice watching us. All right. And, another distinction I want to make between zazen and other forms of meditation is the role of the teacher. So as a teacher, I'm a certified Soto Zen teacher, and I put a lot of effort and stuff into doing that, into playing this particular role. Now, I'm not here to tell everybody that how they should be practicing. I'm not here to say I'm better than you guys who have been doing this for a shorter time. That's not my role. My role is not to be in the position of a guru, right? Soto Zen is not about guru worship. If you guys, maybe some of you are familiar with that term of the guru, and everybody bows to the guru, and what the guru says is, unquestioned. That is not Soto Zen. It's not the way that I experienced practicing with my own teacher. It's not the way that I experienced practicing in Japan with other Japanese monks. It's just that I am playing a particular role as a teacher. And as a teacher, I sometimes point things out to folks, but it's not please don't take what I say personally. I'm just sharing my understanding of the Dharma, because that's my role. That's my job. That's my role, is to share the Dharma freely. And I want to be perfectly transparent about what my role is. It's not that I desire to have students following me. And generally in Soto Zen, we don't try to acquire, teachers should not try to acquire students. That's not the point. But what we are doing is attempting to model what the practice is, and at the same time to be transparent with our own shortfallings of practice within the practice. So I will share with you freely my own mistakes, right? Because I'm not by any sense or stretch perfect at this, and I have difficulty even after close to 30 years of sitting regularly, of sitting zazen. All right, so given this this caveat about what does it mean to be perfect just as you are, and what does it mean to is there something that we can do? Because oftentimes we don't feel like our zazen is perfect, right? Most of us, when we sit zazen, we're not feeling like everything's perfect. So there is that. And then is there something more we can do to make our zazen better? And so one thing I want to make a distinction with is that practicing the precepts outside of zazen affects the quality of our zazen, right? When we practice the precepts outside of zazen, that's going to affect the quality of our zazen. How you live your life affects the quality of your meditation, all right? So you might be sitting perfectly, but not feel like it. And then I would encourage, hey, let's look at how are we actually practicing the precepts? What can we do there to improve? Okay, so on that note, the first point is exercise. I'm gonna say exercise. We're gonna put a parentheses around diet. We'll do that another time. But I want to offer this quote from the godfather of modern fitness, Jack LaLanne. He says, "Diet and exercise are the salvation of America." Woo! Wow, that's a pretty strong statement there. And I would suggest that this particular point of exercise and diet go under the fifth precept of not, traditionally that precept has to do with not abusing drugs or alcohol, but it's really much broader than simply drugs and alcohol. It's about our diet, what we consume, and how we treat our body. Okay, so let me, let's see. Let me go back there. Okay, so I want to share, I'm gonna stop that for a second. I want to share just a little bit my own story with exercise, my teacher's story a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to tell her story for her, but just to share you a little bit about her and her teacher, what I was told anyways. So let me start with myself. I hate exercise. It's not something my chief form of exercise is going swimming. I go into the pool, and I've never enjoyed getting into the pool. It always requires some effort for me to remove my clothing, put on a suit, but the worst part of it is going into a cold pool. It's just not comfortable for me, and I can psych myself up to do it, but I have to continually do that. Now, thanks to the fact that my mother, when I was a little kid, pushing me into keep not giving up. And now while I do enjoy it, it's difficult. It's difficult to just get the momentum going to do it. And I share that because I want to give you an example that you don't have to always like. I mean, if you do the exercise, I like swimming, but you don't always have to like getting into it. And it's often very difficult to get started in some form of exercise. But I swam competitively, and at this time in my life where competition really doesn't even matter, doesn't exist, I know that there's lots of health benefits to regular exercise, whether it's, and for me, it's swimming, it's walking, It's lifting weights now. Those are the things, some of the things that I do. And so this is, again, I'm just sharing my own practice with this. This is my engaging of this precept of taking care of the body, not consuming alcohol. When you exercise regularly, you feel better, right? You might not initially feel better, but there's all kinds of endorphins that I've noticed in my, we call them the neurotransmitters, the endorphins, the dopamine gets generated when we're exercising, and it feels good, right? It's the runner's high. This helps me. This helps me a lot to feel better. And then there's less of a desire to do other things that aren't as healthy, smoking, drinking, etc. And as far as so when I met my teacher, I was very impressed with her because she came from a tradition of classical ballet. She started when she was 13 years old, and she did it right up until she entered the monastery at 30. She was in her mid-30s when she quit dancing. And when I learned that, my respect for her went way up, because at the time when I met her, I was on the swim team, I was competing regularly, and there's a real appreciation for the body, right? Like mindful movement. This is really such a important part of exercise, mindful movement. And she would share about, what is this body? How does it move through space, turn and spin? And as a classical ballet dancer, she was very interested and curious about how her own body worked. And her teacher also, Nododaito Roshi, he was a practitioner of Shorinji Kempo, which is a Japanese form of Kung Fu. Now, he had a taiko drumming group, and those of you who are familiar with taiko, it's a very physical activity. Taiko drumming as part of his temple in Japan. And when I practiced with him in Japan, every morning we would do calisthenics, and then we would run down the mountain. We would chant sutras at different places at the mountain, these little shrines that were set up, and then we'd run back, and then we'd be doing work in the garden. And that was similar to my teacher's experience. She was digging ditches, she was working hard, sweating. So, there's this idea that if you're a monk living in a temple, basically you're going to spend a lot of time meditating. And that cannot be farther from the truth. Well, maybe when you're sitting sesshin for a period of 3 to 5 days, yeah, okay, I'll give that to you. But for the most part, monks are working really hard. It's a very, very physicalized activity. So now this is in contrast to the way that most of us, and I'll show you a clip of an example of this at Sojiji in just a moment. But I just want to emphasize that when a monk who's been training in a temple for a number of months or years, especially in Japan and other temples here in the United States as well, that are training temples, their life is very, very physically, it's surrounded by doing things with their body all of the time. And so when you come to zazen, after being in a space of being very physical, your zazen is necessarily going to be different than if, like many of us, coming to zazen, we may have just gotten out of the car, we may be just turning on a screen. There's nothing wrong with driving, nothing wrong with turning on a screen to do zazen, but you may be missing an important piece of the practice when you don't see zazen practice in the fuller context of Zen training. And just to kind of bring home this message of what we ought to be paying attention to particularly in the United States. I'm going to share my screen again here. These are just some statistics I pulled off online. 25% of American adults don't engage in physical activity during leisure time. According to the CDC, only about 53% of adults were meeting the recommended aerobic activity guidelines, and even fewer were meeting both the aerobic and muscle strengthening activity guidelines. So so about half of us in the United States are actually getting the activity levels that we need. And it further stated, sedentary behavior such as sitting for extended periods is associated with health risks, right? So if you're sitting zazen and think that that's going to be healthier for you, think again, especially if you're not doing some kind of physical movement and exercise. A significant portion of the American population has sedentary lifestyles contributing to overall physical inactivity. All right, and then the last point here, the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance reported that a considerable number of children and adolescents in the US did not meet the recommended levels of physical activity. So we are living in a society that is extraordinarily sedentary. Add zazen on top of that, and you don't necessarily get a good combination, right? So let's look at all of these various benefits to getting good exercise. I can just list these off, but you can read them as well. And I don't think this is new to most of us. Right? Just look at the benefits of exercise. So many good things there. Now, let's bring this back to Buddhism. Like, what does exercise have to do with the Buddha Dharma, with the teachings of the Buddha? Well, certainly during the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, they didn't have to exercise as something separate from their lifestyle because they were already living a very physical life, right? And monks were walking for great distances, and the majority of the population were doing sustaining activities like raising food or hunting and these kinds of things. But exercise was not an issue in 2,500 years ago. But I think if the Buddha lived in our day, modern times in the U.S., he would see that exercise is a means to end suffering. Right? That's the first. This is the what the Buddha taught. What did the Buddha taught? What did the Buddha teach? There is suffering, and there is an end to suffering. All right, what is it that brings us to end suffering? Well, let's look at how we exercise this body. Okay, I want to share this video here now on Sojiji. Let's see here. There we go. And hold on just a sec. Just a moment. All right. There's going to be a little, let's see, I'll skip that. Hopefully you guys can hear this and see it. Let me know if you can't see it. It's just a 3-minute video here. All right, first off, look at this. This monk he's pushing a huge branch, a huge piece of wood against a bancho bell, and it takes tremendous strength just to swing that thing, and he's going to do 108 bows while he's doing that, or maybe 33 bows depending on the time of day. He's going to be bowing at least 33 times as he's ringing that bell. So again, another very, very physical activity. This is how this video clip starts, and this is Sojiji. This is one of the 2 head temples of Zen in Japan.
This is the Daibancho, the great bell at Sojiji, Japan's largest Soto Zen temple. It is rung daily to summon monks to meditation or ceremonial duties.
Notice also that previous clip, they were just standing. Lots of time standing. That is that's different from our ideas of what a Zen monk does. And here's two monks walking.
This modern campus-like institution boasts some of the best amenities of all Japan's monasteries. It is a popular choice for monks in training who spend each day working, studying, and in zazen.
All right, so kitchen practice. This is the work of the Tenzo. They're moving around. They've got to get food out to people. This is a huge part of Zen practice, is learning how to chop vegetables properly.
With a large population of monks to feed, this kitchen, or tenzo, rivals that of many major hotels. The food preparation and menu is still based on Zen cooking methods first laid down by Zen master Dogen over 800 years ago. Each meal consists of soup, rice, and boiled vegetables, and some pickles. This simple vegetarian meal is sufficient, and so nothing is wasted, in keeping with the tradition of Soto Zen. After working in the kitchen for 3 months, the monk will be moved to other tasks, either in the office or cleaning.
All right, now this clip here, this is what I really want to emphasize here. Watch how these monks are cleaning the temple floor. Notice how the monks are running.
This is the long corridor that leads to the Sodo or meditation hall. Every day, the novice monks clean the floor using cloth rags known as zoken. While back-breaking work, the work is undertaken earnestly with concentration. Tasks such as cooking, sweeping, and cleaning are called samu and are given the same reverence as the practice of zazen itself.
All right, yeah, I mean, that's, to me, that says it all. Like, what is Zen practice? And he says, tasks such as sweeping, cleaning, these are given the exact same reverence as zazen itself. This is such an important piece that I want to emphasize. So if you're training in a Zen temple, which I understand that most of us are not, if you're training in a Zen temple, you're getting plenty of movement. You're moving your body, you're running, you're through cleaning. You are cleaning, and that is itself a kind of exercise. And then you sit zazen, right? So when you're that active, zazen is going to have a different quality to it than it will have if you've been living a fairly sedentary life. And so this is just to encourage you to think about how you're getting the movement in, because it's very, very easy in our culture to there's a lethargy towards being sedentary, to being inactive. It's very easy. It's very easy to be inactive in our society. So if we want to optimize our meditation practice, if we want to optimize zazen, we've got to take seriously the need for exercise. And what that's going to look like for each of us is, of course, going to be, it has to be individually tailored. All of us are different in that regard. But and I don't want to say that you should do one thing. That's not the point. But to just simply get you to encourage to those of you that are already have a regular kind of exercise routine, to encourage you to keep doing it as part of your spiritual practice, as part of your keeping of the 5th precept. And those of you that maybe feel like they can do more, to encourage you to do so, right? To encourage you to do a little bit more than maybe that you have been. And so here's some guidelines that are recommended from the CDC. Let me pull that up again. There it is. Okay, so and the American Heart Association. These are guidelines from the CDC and the American Heart Association. Aerobic exercise, 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes high intensity per week, right? That's a lot. That's a lot. I don't think I can't always do that, but I aim for it, right? If you can't do it 100%, don't worry. Just even if you can do 50 minutes a week, do something, right? Strength training. That means focusing on lifting weights, working on. Now you're gonna again. I'm not a strength trainer, so I can't tell you what's right for you. And you do need to have some. I think some guidance in this. I recently hurt myself doing some strength training stuff, and now I'm recovering from it. So you need to have some guidance. You got to learn from your mistakes, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? There's difficulty in starting anything. I told you at the beginning, I hate it's the worst thing in the world is to get into a pool and swim. I hate it, but do it anyway. Do it, right? You'll feel better afterwards. Stretching, flexibility, yoga, 2 days a week. I offer 2 yoga classes a week. Now I'm gonna give a whole nother point on optimizing zazen that is dedicated to yoga, but here they include yoga as a form of exercise. And then balancing exercises, especially for older adults. And then the last thing is to do something that you enjoy doing. So these are recommendations. Don't take them literally for yourself unless there's something that you find that will actually be of benefit for you. And look at your own life, see how you can make small habits. Even if you don't meet these things, don't worry about it. Do the best that you can. Do something, start something, and do something that you enjoy. Again, it's about ending our suffering, that there is a way to end suffering, and we've got to look at this. In Dogen Zenji's Eihei Koso Hotsugamon, he quotes a Chan master, Lung Ya, who said, "In this life, save the body, which is the fruit of many lives." Save the body, which is the fruit of many lives. I remember reading this chanting this at Tassajara and thinking, wow, yeah, I got to take care of my body. So I want to close with this talk on a poem that I wrote recently about swimming. Taking off my clothes as the snake parts with desiccated skin. I jump off the edge. Or is it the 100-foot pole into the unknown? Or is it my home? Like a frog when humans approach, plop, splash. A new underwater world emerges in my eyes. My hands greet the water with a shake. 2 old friends become one body, pulling this Ho-Shin, this Dharma body, to and fro. We, together with all beings, flip the 8-spoked wheel. Thank you so much for your attention this morning. It's been a pleasure to practice with you, and let's have a good rest of the practice. And I know we're kind of at our time here. I went a couple of minutes over. I do want to offer, if those of you who need to leave, please, by all means, feel free to do so. If you have, you want to stick around for questions or comments, please do. Thank you.
Actually, I was going to mention that this is a perfect segue into the fact that we're going to do work practice today because the temple needs cleaning. So just to key people to that.
Great. Yes. And remember, cleaning the temple is equal. It's equal to zazen.
Anyone? Questions or comments for Dashi? If not, shall we put our cushions back in place?
Yeah, let's do it.
Bow out.
All right, that sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Dashi.
Thank you very much. Thank you.